Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming. I'm Alexander. I work for Linutronix, and I contribute to Yocto and Open Embedded. And one of my contributions is that I criticize your Yocto patches. So the subject today is setting up Yocto builds, and I had to cross out the the submission I did for this talk and make it more narrow for reasons that will become clear in a bit. So we start with this professional looking diagram that explains what Yocto does. So as inputs you have some metadata layers and a specific build configuration that specifies like what is it particularly that you want to build, like parameterize the build, and BitBake takes this information, does some number crunching, and on the other side comes out the product that you can put on the market and sell and make money. So images, packages, bills of materials, and everything else you need. So how do you get those things on the left in the first place? Is a gap in Yocto's offering, at least the standard one. It's like a user's problem, and until now users had to write their own shell scripts that would be then difficult to maintain, or they would find third-party tools and use them. So the Yocto project is filling that gap in the feature, and that's the subject of this talk. So before I show you like design and features and diagrams, let's actually live dangerously and go straight into the demo. And I actually invite you to follow what I'm doing, and let's see if I embarrass myself in front of the conference crowd. So we open a terminal and do what the slides specify. So I need to make the font bigger. Bigger. Big enough? I hope so. So BitBake setup as a tool, it is part of the BitBake repository. So we start by cloning that. So it's master next of openembedded.org/bitbake. It's currently in testing and review, and that's where it should be. So if you just run it, it tells you that run with init argument to get started. Like if you don't know what you want, you just tell BitBake setup init. So what happens first is that BitBake setup needs to configure itself if it doesn't yet have a configuration. So it asks you, I want to use these settings, and these settings will go to this configuration file. So one particularly interesting setting is where does it get its configurations from. So they live in a separate repository. There will be a standard Yocto repository for that, or you can make your own like organization repository and put your like organization specific configurations in it. But for now, we agree with what it offers. So it's fetching the that repository with configuration and configurations, and then checks what's available there. And there are two options. They are both for demonstration purposes. They're not what the official like Yocto configurations will be. The choices basically showcase two different ways to specify builds. So we can choose option number 1, but if you're running this on your laptop, you can choose either. They should both work. And then it asks what is your target machine, and okay, you can again choose what you like, and what is your like distribution that you want to choose. So poky or poky with alternative configuration, or poky for tiny machines. And then it tells if you want to like replicate this configuration without having to answer questions, like in a, for example, in a continuous integration environments, you can run this command like init and then say this, and the same thing will be configured. So then it we'll go and initialize a bitbake build directory and asks if that's okay. So the name is a little bit verbose, but that's so that you can tell from the directory names what kind of build is inside that directory. Okay, so fetching bitbake, open embedded core, and meta Yocto as well after a bit. So this is, by the way, using the bitbake fetcher, so you get all the nice things that bitbake fetcher provides you. And the docs as well. Not strictly necessary, but okay, so now it's set. And I guess the important thing is the last two lines where it says where do you find like the local conf and other things, and how do you actually run builds. And this is the kind of experience that we would like newcomers to Yocto, people who have never used it before, to have. Maybe it could use a bit of polish, but this would be the basic workflow. So let's actually initialize a build and run it and see what happens. Okay, so now we should be in a bitbake environment. And yeah, this runs on my laptop with like 4 or 8 cores or whatever, but it should still complete in reasonable time because it's utilizing the Yocto estate mirrors, which provide you all the pre-built things. So even people with laptops will have a decent experience. So Uninative. Okay, so it now is gonna be stuck a little bit at 44%. because it queries the state hash equivalency server, and that takes a bit of time. So while it's doing that, we can look at what is in the configuration that was set up. Okay. Yeah, so these are the files, and let's look at them maybe one by one. So autoconf, this is the file that is intended for tools to be writing into. You should never edit it by hand. The file specifies what features or fragments we enable in this Yocto build. I'll talk about fragments in a bit, but it's like a high level to say I want this feature or that feature. The three features here is that we use the Yocto state mirror for pre-built things, and we choose poky as distro and QEMU as machine. Yeah, pplayers.conf is fairly standard. It's also written by bitbake setup from configuration file. Okay, notes and summary is mostly empty, but that can be fixed. A local conf is empty as well, and that's how it should be. So it only tells that this is intended for your local tweaks, but if you want to publish them, then please find a better place for them than this. So we would like to move away from a situation where people put all kinds of stuff in local conf, and then it becomes not really maintainable. Site conf is where you put things like number of threads and where do you want to have downloads on your local disk. I need to show you that it's a symlink to a like generic siteconf for all of the builds that you initialize with bitbake setup. So once you edit it, it will be the same in every build. So let's see how our build is doing. Pretty okay, I think. So if you look at the state summary, then almost everything comes from the state mirror. So we are now only limited by the network bandwidths and not by abilities of this laptop. Only 13 things are missing, and they all should be all pretty fast. Otherwise, it's just prefetching like packages and sysroot content. So we probably do not need to look at this because the subject is bitbake setup, but we'll get back to it. This mentions that if when you try to run bitbake and it complains that WebSockets are not available, use the Yocto build tools, because that comes with WebSockets module. The build tools is how we do containerized builds, if you will, because the Yocto project does not want to have to choose a container solution. We just have a tarball with the needed tools. So bitbake setup has 4 like main commands for the workflow. You can list what's available. You can initialize interactively or non-interactively, depending on what you want. You can check the status of the build that has been initialized, like do the layers need to be updated, or maybe something in configuration has changed that also need to be updated, and update command would bring that in sync. Like if the layers are all specified master branch, then it will pull the latest stuff from the master. So yeah, here's how it works. It's a bit messy, but this is how Bitbake setup kind of puts everything together to be able to produce a Bitbake configuration directory. So it needs to start with like a configuration file, and configuration file can come, if we go from left to right, yeah, come from 3 places. It can be identifier into a configuration repo, and then it will be looked in that repo. You can simply give a path to a file on local disk or a URL to somewhere on the network. So then from that file, you need to, that file in itself offers you options for the build, and you need to select those options. Either you put them on a command line, or Bitbake setup will ask you, like, here are the options, please make a choice, and we've just done that in the demo. And once you've made those selections, then it produces like the final build configuration file with those choices, and that file is used to check out the layers and write out a build /conf for Bitbake to be able to run. So I'd like to show you how those configurations really look like. They're JSON files, and then we'll see what is possible. Okay. So we previously had 2 choices, like options and nested configs, and you can see them here. So let's start with the nested configs maybe. Okay. So the first part is what do we need to fetch, and what layers, so what tools. It doesn't have to be a layer, like it specifies separately Bitbake and OI core and meta Yocto, which is poky, and where do we put it on the disk. Then come the configurations, and here you can see that you can nest the configuration, so you can define the common part at the top, which says we want to be using these layers, and we want to enable this feature, which is using the state, and then within that we define like 6 different configurations. So QEMU for poky, QEMU x86 for poky, ARM64, and then the same for poky alt-KFG and poky tiny. So you can, for example, this way define a production build and a developer build, or any other like structure to your configurations that you want. But the problem here is that it can result in a kind of combinatorial explosions when you need to make all possible combinations of features. So for that, there is a different way to specify options. Let me show you. So this is the same as previously, but a lot more compact. It says that, okay, we use these 3 layers, we enable fragments, and then we have 2 choices to make. What machine do we want and what distro do we want? And then Bitbake setup will either ask you to make a choice, or you can provide what you want on the command line. So the next subject I'd like to talk about is options or fragments. How are they? How do you actually define them? This is a new feature. It's available in Valnascar. And I guess I should go back to command line and actually show you existing features that are already in OE core and available. Okay, let me. This is a little bit better. So features are basically little configuration snippets that you put in conf/fragment, and for each such feature you need to describe what it does, what it's for. So you need to explain yourself, and then you just put regular statements or variable assignments, the same way you would do in any other Yocto configuration file. So this one says we want to be using this hash server, and we want to be using this state mirror. And if you previously saw autoconf, it has so this statement, and when Bitbake sees this, it will find the fragment file and add it to the build configuration. So there is also a tool that will tell you what fragments are available, and you can enable and disable them in a kind of programmatic way or without having to edit files by hand. So this is already used on Yocto Auto Builder to set up resource constraints for the Auto Builder, and we will be adding more of those to the core project. And there is even brander and newer feature called built-in fragments, and that is for situations when you want to write like a fragment file, but it only has one statement, like a single assignment, and for example for selecting a machine. So writing this for every possible machine would be kind of madness. So we added a shortcut so that you can just say machine/something, and Bitbake will just reinterpret this as machine equals something for any value of something. So if you look at go to master or core master and look at bitbake.conf, you see that it has that statements, fragments built in, and that says for assigning machines and distros, you can just use machine/something or distro/something. So together, this is a standard way to specify features in a Yocto build, like on a higher level than particular, local conf type statements. You just say, I want libc mussel or toolchain clang or systemd for init manager, and it all goes into this OE fragments assignment. So, did our build actually finish?
It did.
It did?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see if we got something useful out of it. Yeah, so here it is, entirely from scratch or from a state on an underpowered laptop. And if we try to log in, then it won't let us, but that's a good thing. Because that is an insecure setting in poky's default local conf, but Marta will be happy to see this. The plan. So the plan is that bitbake setup moves from master next into master, hopefully within the coming weeks. Then I wrote this bullet point for site-specific settings, but that was implemented last week. So I need to cross this out and say that it's done. Then another thing that I would like to add is support for defining standard build targets. What that means is that you can don't have to know what is it that you need to build. You just say bitbake build, and bitbake will just build something standard that you can use. And same for test, flash, deploy, SDK, anything else you can imagine. So I had something like this prototyped in earlier bitbake setups, but then I realized it's not good enough, and it has to be done later, so we can more quickly add bitbake setup to Yocto master. But we'll get back to it, and once that is done, then I can change the title back to producing a complete Linux system with a single command. And that was, I think, all I wanted to show. And now we have time for questions. Okay, then I will repeat the question.
Can you compare it with CAT's setup?
No. I mean, if you like using CAS, then by all means, please do. But this is...
This seems to be doing the same thing.
Yes, but if you CAS is a project from Siemens, and we cannot use it as an official project.
Why not?
Because it's controlled by Siemens, and to be able to use it as a Yocto project, it would have to come under Linux Foundation. So we would have to effectively fork it. Yes, politics.
May I interrupt here? I mean, I'm one of the CAS maintainers, and what I'm a bit surprised is that we are really reinventing the wheel here. And I mean, CAS is licensed under the MIT license, so if that would be a problem, you could just have forked it. So I'm really wondering what.
We do not want to fork it.
Okay. So there is no real technical reason not to choose.
Well, there is. I mean, CAS is working in a fundamentally different way than bitbake setup. CAS is a monolithic, self-contained tool that does everything itself. This, on the other hand, relies on bits and pieces in the core projects like fragment, fetchers, templates, and other things that were developed and can be used independently of bitbake setup. So you don't have to use bitbake setup if you don't like it, but you can use fragments, and that's how we wanted to do this. Please.
Is this kind of the spiritual successor to set up layers? Because it looked like for a while that set up layers would be the way later automatic scaling.
Yes. Well, setup layers is just checks out the layers for you. This checks out the layers using the bitbake fetcher, which brings advantages of the using the fetcher. Like you can put them into the same DL there, and you have not just your recipes, but also the layers in it. And then it also sets up the build.
And maybe as a follow-up question, would there be also some support for maintenance of the layers? So if I say, check out the LTS branch's latest commit, can that be redone and then captured? So it's the repository that holds the configuration can be updated automatically. Like in a Nike job. I say, every night I run a fetch to fetch the latest commits on the LTS branch of OpenEmbedded, OpenBitbake and stuff, and then build that, check that it works, and then if it works, commit it back to the repository and configuration.
Yes, you can have two different configurations files in a configuration repository. One that says fetch master for everything, like the tips, and another that has particular commit IDs that has been tested and are known to work. And then you direct developers to use one or the other depending on what they want.
But you still would then have to manually update the configuration with the fixed commits.
Well, there are JSONs, so in Python that is not complicated, because the reason, by the way, it's JSON and not YAML is that Python has a lot better support for JSON than YAML formats in a commonly available versions. So reading a JSON, tweaking a few things, and writing it back is like this much code.
Is there a particular reason to fetch poky, to fetch the bitbake OpenEmbedded core and not poky?
Yes. Poky as an integrated repo will probably be deprecated. So it's done with a tool called combo layer that nobody likes, and it's not standard way to combine things. I think submodules is nowadays how you do it, and we'll see what we do with this integrated poky layer, but the way forward is to fetch them separately.
In
the announcement email from Richard, I read something about plugins and that you can maybe use CAS as plugins for the split-bake layer. Is this still a thing or an idea, or is this like revised?
You need to ask the CAS maintainers how much compatibility they want to implement with bitbake setup. But bitbake setup configuration files are designed hopefully in such a way that they can be used with tools other than bitbake setup. So I mean, if you see here, it has a bitbake setup section, but it could as well have a CAS section in there. So depending on what you use, one or the other will be used.
Just one question, when you reference the master branches and so on, and you then build it, and then you build an SBOM for it, you still get the exact caches, so you can at least, if somebody else built it and you check it out now, you don't get the same configuration and same build if you just in the master branches everywhere, right? Sorry, you didn't kill them, you just use revision master, so it depends on when you build it, what you actually get and whether it works. So when somebody else used this to create their whole Yocto setup and so on, then you can still figure out which exact branches and which commits they used on those branches, right? Or do you just get an info that this came from a Git master somewhere?
It's not just on here.
It's not in here.
The layer revision. We'd like to add that. So.
I think there is something is in meta lib OEL, like standard library of open embedded core, that a function that you can call, and it will return you a dictionary of what layers are in your build and what revisions they're at. And that's, by the way, what setup layers is using to write out the JSON with revisions. There is no support yet for like writing out bitbake setup files, but there could be. So we have, I think, 3 minutes.
Yeah, maybe as a follow-up on that revision topic, I particularly like bring that in again, CAS approach to have log files. So maybe that could also be in addition to a bitbake setup config, to have a log file for that, for the revisions, to have reproducibility, but still, yeah, the generic configuration so that users can check out whether they want to get the
Yeah, something like this already exists. I just call it override files, but they can be made something different. It's like a thing you put on top of the basic config, and that checks out something different, like in this case, master next.
Okay, so I just pin my revisions in there, and then I can select.
Yes. Or you write out a whole separate config file, but then it needs to include the build configuration as well.
I have a question. Does the tool support specific layer ordering in BB layers code?
Yes.
Because if you have broken layers, then maybe you need to order them specifically in BB layers code. And I think this is one thing which CAS does not support.
Well, BB layers is a list, so it adds them in the order specified here.
On the other hand, that is not something this should handle, because that should be handled by the priorities between the layers, regardless of the system CAS, repos, submodules, or whatever you use.
But you need to put them in a BB layers variable, so this just specifies what should be in BB layers variable and in which order. Yeah.
On the nesting that you implemented, you call it nesting, but it's just those two levels, or could you put new configurations under the existing configuration?
It's unlimited. I know recursion. University, had it there, struggled with it.
But you implemented this via recursion, actually?
Huh?
You actually implemented this via recursion? So
Yes.
recursive algorithm? Okay.
Yes.
Can you do just the bitbake setup section if you want to use submodules or something? Like if in your config, if you got rid of the layer section and use submodules, if you just have the bitbake setup, and it would work.
Well, you need to specify one repository that holds the submodules, and then yes, it will work. Because these things are actually path components, so they can be much longer if that's how the submodules thingy. So yes, it is compatible with submodules.
Does it check out the submodules automatically? Because that's typically not the default Git configuration.
It's using bitbake fetcher, and bitbake fetcher has a git sm submodule fetcher. So here it says git, but you could say git sm, and then it will do it.
But those are actually like source URI.
Yeah, well, it does some mangling to give them to the fetcher, so they are source URIs effectively, yes.
Same for the revision. Can you put the fix SHA1
Hmm?
instead of the branch? I mean, in that field, in the rep field, can you put the fix SHA1?
Yes.
We'll take that one regardless of where is the branch name. We'll clone the SHA1.
Yes.
Can you actually batch these repos? Since these are SRC URIs.
No. No. I know people love to misuse casts this way, but it's still a misuse, and I will resist adding this. Okay, 2 minutes passed, and it's time for drinking, so thank you for coming, and look.